Good morning, gorgeous. Yes, you. I am so glad you are back here with me today on Rosie Rooted and Rising. And I want you to settle in because this episode is a continuation of what we were talking about last time in episode 8. But we're going to go a little deeper. So last week we talked about what happens when the room was too small. We talked about those places where your growth, your leadership, your clarity, your voice, or your becoming no longer fits inside the environment you were in. But today, I want to talk about what happens after you realize that. Because realizing the room was too small is one thing. Reclaiming the parts of yourself you left behind while trying to fit that room is something else entirely. So today's episode is called Reclaim What the Room Made You Doubt. And gorgeous, I want you to hear me clearly. Sometimes the damage of a small room is not just what happened to you. It is what you started questioning about yourself afterward. You may have walked in confidence. You may have walked in with ideas. You may have even walked in with a vision, experience, wisdom, and a willingness to serve. But after enough dismissal, enough silence, enough resistance, enough being ignored, enough feeling like your voice was too much or your insight was inconvenient, you can start second guessing things that used to be natural for you. You begin to wonder if your timing is off, if your voice is too strong, if your ideas are too much. Maybe you saw it wrong. You wonder if you should have said less, cared less, expected less, or asked for less. And before you know it, the room did not just limit your opportunity, it started shaping your self-trust. This is why healing matters, ladies. Because when you leave a small room, your body may be gone, your name may no longer be on the schedule, your responsibilities may have shifted, and the door may be closed behind you, but there may still be pieces of you standing in that room waiting to be asked to come back. Your voice, your boldness, your creativity, your ease, your confidence, your ability to trust what you see, your ability to walk into a room without shrinking before anyone speaks. And this is where we have to slow down and tell the truth. You cannot build your next chapter while still letting the old room define your worth. You cannot keep asking the same old room to confirm what God already placed inside of you. You cannot measure your calling by the capacity of people who were never equipped to hold it. That does not mean they were all bad people. It doesn't mean that at all. What it does mean that everything about the room was wrong. It means the room had limits. And at some point, you have to stop making its limits your identity. The scripture that I want you to sit with today is Joel 2:25, where God says, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. Now, I know that scripture is often talked about in terms of restoration. And yes, it is about restoration. But I want you to think about restoration in a deeper way. Because restoration is not only God giving you new opportunities, sometimes restoration is God giving you back to yourself. He restores your peace, your discernment, your ability to hear your own voice without fear. He restores your courage to try again, your ability to dream without immediately shrinking the dream down to what feels safe. He restores your willingness to believe that there is still more for you. And I believe some women listening today are not asking God for another door. You are asking Him to help you feel whole enough to walk through it. I'll say that again. You are asking Him to help you feel whole enough to walk through it. Because what good is a bigger room if you still feel small inside of it, right? What good is a new opportunity if the old wound is still making the decisions? What good is more visibility if you still do not trust your own voice? That is why this work matters. Because expansion means healing, because expansion without healing can become another form of performance. You can move into a new space and still be trying to prove something to the old one. You can start something new and still be waiting for people from the past to notice. You can succeed and still feel tied to the people who dismissed you. And gorgeous, that is not freedom. Freedom is when you build because you are called, not because you are trying to be seen by the people who missed you. Freedom is when obedience matters more than proving. When your peace is not waiting on someone else's regret. When you stop checking to see whether the old room finally understands what it lost. Because the old room cannot be your audience anymore, sis. Come on. God did not bring you this far for you to keep living with your neck turned backward. There is more ahead. And I want to say this with care. The in-between place can feel strange. You may have left one room, but the next room has not fully taken shape yet. Something ended, but the new thing is still forming. You are no longer who you were, but you are still learning how to stand as who you are becoming. That space can feel uncomfortable. It can feel quiet. It can feel lonely sometimes, but it can also be sacred because that is where God begins to show you what needs to be released and what needs to be reclaimed. Maybe you need to release the need to understand. Let me go back. Maybe you need to release the need to be understood by people who benefited from your misunderstanding. Maybe you need to release the identity of being the one who always makes it work. Maybe you need to release the habit of staying available to spaces that drain you. Maybe you need to release the fear of being called difficult. You need to release the agreement you made with smallness because smallness felt safer. And then after release comes reclaiming. That is the part I want you to pay attention to because reclaiming is not always loud. It may not look like making an announcement. It may not look like proving anything. Most of the time, reclaiming is quieter than that. It looks like speaking plainly in a safe conversation and not apologizing afterward. It looks like sharing your ideas and letting it stand. It looks like writing again. It looks like applying to the opportunity. It looks like asking for the meeting. It looks like saying no without writing a whole essay to explain why. It looks like resting without guilt because your nervous system is no longer living in defense mode. It looks like admitting to God, I am tired from trying to fit. And that honestly matters, ladies, because God does not need the polished version of you in order to heal you. Bring Him the real one. Bring Him the woman who is disappointed. Bring Him the woman who feels embarrassed for staying too long. Bring Him the woman who is angry that her wisdom was dismissed. Bring Him the woman who wants to trust her voice again but still feels tender. Bring Him the woman who is ready to rise but does not want to rise from bitterness. He can work with that. In fact, that may be the exact place where restoration begins. And I want you to be gentle with yourself in this season, ladies, because once you begin reclaiming, old patterns may still show up. You may catch yourself over explaining again. You may shrink in a moment and realize it later. You may water down your words because your body remembers what it felt like to be dismissed. You may still brace when somebody disagrees with you. That does not mean you are not healing. That means you are learning a new way. Growth does not mean you never fall back into an old pattern. Of course not. Growth means you notice sooner. You recover quicker. You return to yourself with more compassion. So when you catch yourself shrinking, do not blame yourself. Pause and ask, what am I afraid will happen if I bring my full self here? That question will tell you a lot. Maybe you are afraid of rejection. Maybe you are afraid of being misunderstood. Maybe you are afraid of being labeled. Maybe you are afraid of losing access. Maybe you are afraid of success. Maybe you are afraid that if you expand, your life will have to change in ways you cannot control. That fear deserves your attention, but it does not deserve the steering wheel. You can listen to fear without obeying it. You can say, I hear you, but you are not going back to small. That is self-leadership. That is rootedness. That is what it looks like when a woman begins moving forward from survival into alignment. And I believe this is where many women over 50 are right now. You are not trying to be 25 again. You are not chasing some fantasy version of self or success. You are looking at your life with honesty and saying, I still have more in me, but I do not want to build it from the same place of proving, striving, and shrinking. That is sacred, because at this stage, you know too much to keep pretending. You know what it costs to ignore yourself. You know what it feels like to stay too long. You know how quickly time moves. You know peace matters. You know your health matters and your voice matters. You know God did not bring you through all those years, all those lessons, all those transitions, and all that growth just for you to keep folding yourself into rooms that cannot hold you. There is more, and I want you to hear that without pressure. More does not always mean busier. More does not always mean bigger in the way the world defines bigger. More may mean more peace, more alignment, more honest relationships, more spiritual grounding, more courage, more clarity, more meaningful work, more freedom to be who God created you to be. That kind of more is worth making room for. So this week, I want you to do something practical. Think about one room in your life. It could be your workplace, a relationship, a role you hold, a group, an expectation, a habit, or even an old version of yourself. Choose one place where you have felt yourself getting smaller. Please do not choose everything at once. I want you to work on one. Then ask yourself, what did this room teach me to doubt? Sit with that. Maybe it taught you to doubt your voice. Maybe it taught you to doubt your leadership. Maybe it taught you to doubt your timing. Maybe it taught you to doubt your standards. Maybe it taught you to doubt your own discernment. Let me say that one again. Maybe it taught you to doubt your own discernment. Maybe it taught you to doubt whether what you carry is valuable. Let me say that again, ladies. Maybe it taught you to doubt whether what you carry is valuable. Once you can name what was affected, you can begin to heal it. Then you're going to ask, what do I need to reclaim? Confidence, joy, creativity, boldness, peace, vision, your ability to speak without overthinking every word. I want you to name it and then choose one act of reclaiming, not a dramatic one, a faithful one. If you need to reclaim your voice, speak honestly in one safe place. If you need to reclaim creativity, create something without judging it. If you need to reclaim confidence, keep one promise to yourself this week. If you need to reclaim peace, stop participating in one conversation that keeps pulling you back into the old pattern. If you need to reclaim your vision, write down what you want without shrinking it to fit what feels practical. One act of reclaiming can open something in you. And gorgeous, as you do this, remember, being dismissed is not the same as being disqualified. A room can overlook you and still not have the power to cancel what God is doing. You heard that? A room can overlook you and still not have the power to cancel what God is doing. A leader can ignore your ideas and still not have authority over your calling. A system can fail to honor your wisdom and still not be the final word over your life. You may have treated your responses like a verdict when it was really only a reflection of their capacity. Those are two very different things. So take your breath back, take your voice back, take your peace back, and take your future back. The room was too small, but your life does not have to be. The room was too small, but your calling is still intact. The room was too small, but your voice still matters. And God is still restoring what the locust tried to eat. This week, carry this question with you. What part of me am I ready to bring back home? Pray over it, ladies. Write about it. Pay attention to what rises up in you. Then take one faithful step, because that is how rooted women rise. They tell the truth. They grieve what needs to be grieved. They reclaim what was buried. They stop asking small rooms to define big assignments. And they keep walking with God. If today's episode resonated with you, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with another woman who's rising or someone in your life who needs it. Follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next on Rosie, Rooted and Rising. Until next time, sis y hermana, stay rooted, stay blessed, and keep rising. New episodes every Monday morning.